The cafe was quiet, sunlight slicing through blinds and dust, casting thin golden stripes across the floor. She sipped her coffee, fingers tracing the rim of the cup, heart beating faster than the calm around her suggested. A man at the next table glanced down, eyes catching a flash of ink just above the cuff of her sleeve. The symbol was faint, partially erased, a ghost of a life she had buried 20 years ago. For a moment, time shifted. Memories of nights in foreign deserts, the hum of helicopters overhead, the weight of orders that never appeared in any official record. Her chest tightened. Could someone recognize it? Was it safe to breathe here, in this quiet corner of the world she had built for herself? The man's gaze lingered too long, and she realized he knew. The questions pressed in. What happens when the past finds you in the calmest place? And can a life ever be fully erased when the ink beneath your skin refuses to lie? She left the cafe quickly, the morning sun harsh against her skin, a contrast to the controlled quiet inside. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the shadows of her past were following. The town felt the same as it always had, calm, familiar. But she could no longer pretend the world was untouched by what she carried. Her pulse still thrummed with the memory of being seen, recognized, and she couldn't decide if it was fear or relief. Every corner, every familiar street suddenly held the possibility of exposure. Could she truly outrun the past she had tattooed on her skin, even 20 years later? Her apartment door clicked shut behind her, the sound startling in the sudden silence. She leaned against it, closing her eyes, trying to calm the surge of memories. The walls around her were filled with ordinary things. Books, photos, a plant by the window. But they did little to mask the extraordinary weight she carried inside. Every object, every quiet moment, felt fragile against the storm of what had been erased from history. The tattoo, hidden beneath her sleeve, pulsed like a secret heartbeat. She sat on the edge of her bed, tracing the outline of the tattoo beneath her sleeve, feeling the faint ridges under her fingers. Memories of desert nights, of comrades she would never see again, flashed unbidden. It was a life erased from all records, yet alive beneath her skin, whispering of loyalty, loss, and the missions that never existed on paper. She wondered if someone like him, the man in the cafe, could understand the weight of a story written in ink and memory. A knock at the door startled her, sharp and deliberate. She froze, heart hammering, unsure if it was a neighbor or something more dangerous. The ordinary world she had built felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter, like glass ready to shatter. She reached slowly, every instinct alert, every memory of stealth and caution rushing back. Whoever was on the other side might hold the key to her past, finally catching up with her, or they might just be the last thread of normalcy she had left. The beach was quiet, waves lapping softly against the shore, a deceptive calm. She walked slowly along the sand, trying to think, to untangle the sudden knot of recognition that had settled in her chest. The memory of the man in the cafe lingered, his gaze sharp, deliberate, knowing. She realized the past she had buried wasn't just a shadow anymore. It had stepped into the light, following her here, into every corner of her life. Later, in a small-town bar, she tried to lose herself in the quiet chatter of strangers. But she couldn't shake it. The certainty that someone knew, that the secrets inked on her skin were no longer safe. Every laugh, every clink of glasses echoed in her mind, mingling with flashes of missions, helicopters and nights where the line between life and death had been drawn in sand and blood. He approached without a word, sliding into the seat across from her, calm, steady, familiar. The weight in his eyes told her he knew more than he should. Recognition didn't need confirmation. It was already there, unspoken but undeniable. For a moment, she wondered if all the years of hiding had been in vain. She shifted slightly, masking the tattoo as if it could disappear with a sleeve. But the moment had passed. He had seen it, recognized it. The world of secrecy she had built, carefully layered over 20 years, began to crumble with a single glance. Every mission erased, every order never recorded, every lost comrade, all of it alive in a symbol that refused to fade. Words hovered between them, unspoken but heavy. The air felt thick with history neither had planned to revisit. She realized that her life of careful avoidance had ended. Someone knew her past, and it would not let her walk away quietly. The rain fell in thin sheets, drumming on the roof of the small apartment. She stood by the window, tracing the path of water as if it could wash away the sudden tension that had crept into her life. He was coming back, she knew it. The look in his eyes in the bar had left no doubt. The past she had hidden for decades now pressed against her from every side, cold and inescapable, and she wondered how she could face it without losing herself completely. When he knocked again, the sound startled her, sharper than the rain. She opened the door to find him standing there, soaked but steady, the faintest smile hinting at the understanding between them. Recognition had become confrontation, but there was no anger, only an unspoken acknowledgement of what had been erased from every record, yet alive beneath their skins. They sat across from each other at her small kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Words were unnecessary. The tattoo on her arm spoke volumes, the erased history bridging decades. She felt the weight of missions, of secrecy, and of comrades lost pressing between them. The confrontation was not loud, but it rattled her more than any gunfire ever had. He spoke quietly, naming details that only someone who had served alongside her would know. Names, dates, locations, things she had hoped would remain buried. Each word tightened her chest, yet also released a strange relief. The world of secrecy and fear she had carried alone for 20 years was finally acknowledged. Her hands shook slightly as she rolled up her sleeve fully, revealing the entire tattoo. The symbol, once hidden, now demanded recognition. It was not just ink, it was memory, loyalty, and loss. For the first time in decades, she let herself see it openly, and the silence that followed was filled with both fear and the strange comfort of being understood. The rain eased, leaving the city streets slick and reflective. She closed her eyes, and suddenly she was elsewhere. A dusty desert night, the hum of helicopters overhead, orders shouted over radios that no record would ever show. The faces of those she had lost flashed before her eyes, a chorus of ghosts reminding her that the past was alive, pulsing in memory as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. She remembered the mission that had gone wrong, the orders she had followed that no one would ever acknowledge. Every detail, from the shifting sand to the muffled cries of the injured, was etched into her mind. The tattoo on her arm was more than ink. It was a living memorial to every life she had touched, and everyone she had failed to save. Back in the present, she traced the tattoo on her forearm again, grounding herself. The memories were overwhelming, but they also reminded her of something she had nearly forgotten. The bond of those who had served beside her. Erased from records, they were ghosts to the world, but alive in memory, their loyalty enduring beyond bureaucracy and time. Flashbacks shifted rapidly. Rain-soaked urban rooftops, midnight raids, the smell of gunpowder, whispered codes, and laughter shared with comrades she would never see again. The world outside her apartment felt trivial. In comparison, a fragile shell over the intensity of the life she had lived and hidden. She realized that hiding the tattoo had never erased the memories. They were permanent, etched into her bones, her instincts, her heartbeat. The man who had recognized it wasn't a threat. He was a reminder that the past would always follow, but it could also serve as a bridge to acceptance, to telling the story that had been erased for too long. The phone rang, shattering the quiet of her apartment. She froze, the faint pulse in her wrist matching the sudden rise in tension. On the other end was a voice that carried authority and unspoken warning. Someone knew. The world she had built, carefully layered over 2 decades of quiet living, was cracking. Every erased file, every deleted record, every shadow she had relied on for safety suddenly felt fragile. Outside, the streets seemed unnervingly still. She walked with purpose, each step measured, alert to the possibility of being followed. The past was no longer confined to memory. It had a pulse, a presence that pressed against her every move. She felt the weight of history, erased from records but alive in every heartbeat, every instinct sharpened by years of survival. He met her at a quiet corner of the town, calm but insistent. His eyes held questions, and perhaps the first offer of understanding she hadn't dared to hope for. The tension between secrecy and truth was palpable. She knew that whatever path she chose next could not be undone. The world wanted her story buried, but he represented a chance to confront it without surrendering herself entirely. Back in her apartment, the files he had brought spread across the table. Names, dates, operations, all the missions officially erased from history were there in black and white. For the first time, the weight of bureaucracy and betrayal pressed down with clarity. The choice was hers: continue hiding in safety, or step forward into the light of truth and honor the memories of those who no one would ever acknowledge. She touched the tattoo on her forearm once more, as if drawing strength from it. The past could no longer be hidden. The weight of 20 years of secrets pressed upon her, but it also offered clarity. To honor the comrades whose lives had vanished from records, she had to act. The question was no longer if she would confront the past, but how. The abandoned warehouse smelled of dust and rust, a place removed from the world, perfect for conversations that could not be overheard. She stepped inside with Jack, every sense alert, scanning shadows for threats. They had a plan, but uncertainty lingered. The past, long hidden, was about to collide with the present in a way neither of them could ignore. Files were spread across a makeshift table, digital screens and printed documents combining into a puzzle of erased operations. Every name, every mission, every lost life that had been denied acknowledgement was laid bare. Maya traced lines between events and people, realizing the depth of what had been hidden and the magnitude of the truth they now held. They moved with precision, stepping through memories and risks alike. Every action carried weight. Every choice risked exposure. The bureaucratic forces that had erased her unit were still watching, still trying to control what could never be forgotten. And yet, in this collision of past and present, Maya felt the first hint of power. The chance to reclaim her story and honor those erased from history. Colonel Graves appeared in the doorway, his presence rigid and cold. The embodiment of bureaucracy and control, he demanded compliance, erasure, silence. But she no longer flinched. For the first time, she stood firmly in the truth of her own story. The confrontation was inevitable, and the balance of power had shifted. The argument ended not in violence, but in acknowledgement. She had reclaimed her narrative, exposing the erasures and honoring those lost. The storm of secrecy began to settle, leaving clarity in its wake. What had been hidden for 20 years was now in the light, and the first steps toward justice and recognition could finally begin. The sun rose over the coastal town, painting the streets in warm gold. She walked along the shoreline, letting the waves lap at her feet, feeling the weight of 20 years of secrecy lighten with every step. The past remained a part of her, but it no longer controlled her. Each wave seemed to whisper the stories of those erased from history, and she finally felt their presence as strength rather than burden. She met Jack at a quiet overlook. The town spread below like a patchwork of light and shadow. They didn't need words. Understanding passed silently between them. The recognition, the confrontation, the reclamation of truth, all had brought them here, to a place where the past could coexist with the life she had rebuilt. She traced the tattoo lightly with her fingers, a symbol of loyalty, loss, and resilience. It no longer represented secrecy or fear. It was a testament to survival and memory. The lives erased from records were no longer invisible. They lived in her, in the strength she carried forward, and in the stories she was finally ready to share. Letters, photographs, and files once hidden or erased were now cataloged, acknowledged, and honored. She had reclaimed not just her story, but the memory of everyone who had served and disappeared from official records. In the quiet of her apartment, she placed a photograph of a lost comrade on the table. A small but powerful act of remembrance. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a warm glow. She stood on the beach one last time, breathing deeply, feeling the past and present converge. The tattoo, once hidden for fear, now stood as a symbol of endurance and honor. The memories, the comrades, the erased missions. They would never be forgotten, and as the waves receded, she realized that the life she had reclaimed was finally hers, in full, unshakable, and free.